good afternoon, or assume it's good afternoon for everybody. There may be some good mornings here still. I'm Stephen Haynes. I'm the secretary for CBI, and we welcome you to I'm in Charge Now What? This has been a popular session that's been presented over the years at the CBI convention, and I think this is the second or third time we've done it as a webinar here during the COVID times. So we thank you for joining us. One thing I do want to do is I want to promote our next planned one right now, webinar, which will be Tuesday, February 22nd at 3:30 p.m. And that's using Discord to communicate with your staff and more. It's a new session. If most of y'all are, I would guess, familiar with Discord. So it's going to be using Discord to communicate, work with teams. And if you've ever been to our Slack session presented by Lisa Marshall, it's along those lines of using apps to communicate with your staff. Again, it's February 22nd at 3:30 p.m. There's a couple other webinars that we may have in between then, so just keep an eye out for that and be on the lookout. And so with that, I'm going to introduce our co-hosts here for today. We have Lynn Gilbert, who is at North Carolina State University, where she's the Associate Director of Student Media and the Station Advisor for WKNC 88.1. And then with us also is Zoe Robinson, who is the Executive Director at Viking Fusion here at Berry College. And I, again, am the advisor at Viking Fusion here at Berry College, along with being CBI Secretary. So with that, I'm going to let Jamie kick it off for us here, and we'll get going.
All right, I am going to share my screen and, of course, put it in slideshow mode. Okay, you are here for I'm in Charge Now What? With myself, Stephen, and Zoe. And before we begin, we do want to pay a little homage to the folks that came before us, if you will. Our friends Mark Mabin and John Onderdonk are the ones who originally developed this, and they have passed the torch to me, and then temporarily at least to Stephen and Zoe. And so we want to thank them for the hard work that they have put in so far. So I'm in charge. Now what? Perhaps you are a student leader or thinking of becoming a student leader, and maybe you are frightened, and we're going to help you out with that. So what is this session? So what it is, it's a quick primer on management and leadership basics, whether you're a current leader again or a future leader. It is also material that you can use back on your own campus, where you probably currently are, or at home. What it isn't is a subject area detailed deep dive. It's a primer after all. Fortunately, CBI, specifically the National Student Electronic Media Convention that we will be at in Orlando in October, that'll feature also great sessions, and we'll drill down into the basics that we're going to cover now. So congratulations, you've been elected or hired as a student leader. And if you haven't yet, just, close your eyes for a second and imagine what it would be like. So you're probably feeling pretty proud. You're probably pretty excited. This might be the position that you've always dreamed of. Maybe you started at your college radio or television station, your video outlet, and was like, wow, wouldn't it be great if I was, the executive director, the general manager one day, and you've dreamed of it. And now it's there. You have some great ideas, but you're also probably a little scared and uncertain on how you're going to best manage your job. Well, we can give you a little bit of reassurance. First off, Dr. Benjamin Spock says, you know more than you think you know. And this is one of my favorites from Esther Dyson. Always make new mistakes. Whenever I train new folks at the radio station, I say, it's okay to make a mistake. The idea is to not make the same mistake again and again and again. So always make new mistakes.
All right, so let's celebrate a little. Woo! We're excited. But next, you got to come down and you got to start learning your role. Okay, is there a job description for your position? Check it out. You might be surprised at how many stations don't have a job description, or it's an outdated job description. And so you kind of learn things like, wait a minute, this is not all that it seems to be, and there's more to it. So we need to you might want to update that. Don't be afraid to ask questions, especially if you're coming in and you've got somebody from before who you can talk to them, get some advice, especially the outgoing leaders in your position. find out what they know. What are the general expectations for your job? I know with Zoe there, I have lots of expectations for her, but what does she expect from the job? What are her expectations for the job? And we'll let her tell that as we go along. Job descriptions for the other positions. So for example, I'm going to pick on Zoe here, who is the executive director at Viking Fusion, but she's got all these other positions below her. So she's got to know all the job descriptions so she knows who she's hiring to what positions and who's best suited for those positions. And what's your policy? What is it that you're doing? What is it you're trying to communicate? What is it that you want to get across? Those are all important things that you need to know about your role. And whether it's you're a music director or a programming director or social media director, or for us, our production supervisor, well, I say production, so news producer, news director. So knowing what are the policies and stuff that go with your particular job, but also for the station. Those are important things to know and talk about.
Yeah. And the best time to revise job descriptions is before people are actually in them. So that's the first thing that you should do as you're hired. Zoe.
Yeah. And one thing I just wanted to really enhance is the asking questions part. I know when I first was an admin, like my sophomore year, I did not want to ask anybody any questions. I'm very self-sufficient. But now being an outgoing admin for the production supervisor, and I'm the incoming executive director for the past 2 years, I would love to answer anybody's question about anything. And so knowing that the people that are outgoing, they want to give you as much stuff that they learned throughout the year as you want to know, and it's so much better if you start out with the basics of what all the mistakes that they made, so you don't make those mistakes and you can make all your own mistakes and then share those mistakes with your next one. So people really do want to answer your questions, and so never feel afraid to ask questions.
Absolutely.
Okay, so take stock and evaluate. One, what's the state of your department? Is it in good shape, bad shape? We're making do with things. What is it? What needs to be revised or fixed? You have the resources that you need. You have some equipment that's working, but it's on its last leg, and it's okay, we need to move it out and get some new equipment in. Do you have policies and paperwork and forms and anything else that you might need ready to go? Or do they need to be totally revised and updated? Do you need to have new policies and resources for COVID? Hey, that's been a thing for the past. We're constantly, okay, what do we need to do for COVID? What kind of new rules? What do we need? Well, there are unresolved problems from last term. And so I know some people change over positions from fall to spring semester. Some of them, it's the end of academic year to the beginning of the next academic year. So is there leftover things? One example, I'm going to go back to COVID here for a minute. When COVID first hit, and this probably happened at a lot of stations, and if you're old enough to remember, we're all sent home. Nobody's there. And then it's months before you're able to get back on campus, and things are just left hanging. So you got, okay, we got to pick up the pieces and get everything going again. So what are some unresolved issues? What needs to be accomplished? What is it that you want to do? What is it that you want to succeed in? What are your goals? So what is it that you want to accomplish in the next year? Those are some things that you need to take stock of and evaluate, whether you're the top person at your station, or you're just one of the administrative staff at your position. All important things that you need to do.
Absolutely. You want to talk about and think about the organizational structure that best fits your management style and your department's goals. Are you going to be a real hands-on leader? Do you have staff that need you to be a hands-on leader? Or are you going to take a little bit more of a backseat approach and allow them to learn on their own? Sometimes it depends on who you have beneath you and what kind of assistance do you need to succeed. Think about, does your production team have the people that they need? And if they don't, can you move resources to ensure that you do? One thing you want to remember is that if you don't need an assistant, don't take it. You don't want to hire someone and give them a title and then not have anything for them to do, because that's a demoralizing position where, oh, I'm supposed to be this assistant music director, but there's no music to ever review. And the music director doesn't want me to help them. So I guess I just don't do anything. And then they just sort of fall away because there's no value that they feel they bring to the organization. So if you don't have a space for someone, don't create one just to keep them around. Try to find something that there is there and move them around as necessary, but don't just have an assistant to have an assistant. Make sure there's enough workload for it, or create more work for them. You want to make sure that you set goals. Now, you might have 10 goals and you might have to determine what goal is your number one goal, or you might just have one goal. It depends on your specific organization and what you need. Goals help give you and your team shared directions. Feel free to write your goals on a pretty sheet of paper and post them around your office so that everyone from, just the editors to the DJs, anyone that comes in knows what your goals are. Oh, we're trying to increase our social media presence by 10% this year. Okay, what can I do to help that? Goals can help you avoid chaos. So what you're working toward on any given day. Now, sometimes you might be handling paperwork and emails all day long, but you know that when that lifts a little bit, you have the ability to work on those overarching goals, and they help you to stay on task. So you remember that, oh, maybe I can't spend 4 hours organizing my inbox right now. I need to focus on planning this concert, on making sure that the show proposal is ready on time, communicating with my staff, whatever it is that you need to do. And they help you, again, communicate with your station and your department what you wish to accomplish. And they can help motivate others. Oh, I've actually been taking a social media class in my comm program, and they talked about doing this. And so people that aren't necessarily even on your leadership team can help you with those goals if you let them know what they are. And they also let you evaluate your progress. Are you doing a good job? What does that look like? How do you know? Having a goal and having a way to measure it is something that can really help.
And I want to step in here. When we're talking about this is with Zoe. So I'm going to brag on Zoe again, get her to speak to this, is she was, when she came in, she's been really good at is not only developing her goals, but goals for her entire team. So Zoe, you want to?
Yeah, so I actually learned it. I have come to this session all 4 years of my CBI experience. And so I actually got this idea from here. And one thing I kind of noticed it after my sophomore year when I was production supervisor. It kind of, the team never really felt completely whole when I was like doing the production team. And so I had them at the end of the first semester sit down, and I think I had them do like 3 goals for themselves, 2 goals for the production team, and 1 expectation they had of me to help them achieve those goals. And then as I kind of got to executive director, I had the admin do that with their team because I felt that it was so beneficial to for a team building exercise. And now I kind of have everybody do 3 goals for themselves, 2 goals for Viking Fusion and their team, and then 2 goals for their specific admin and 1 goal for me. And then I take them all together and I copy and paste them, and I give all the admin all their expectations and all their team's goals, so they hang it up in their little offices and they can look at them. And then I actually have all of those, and when we have evaluation meetings, I can pull up everybody's individual goals and say oh, you had this goal for this semester, do you feel like you accomplished that? What can we do next semester to make that goal a reality? And it makes everything a lot more, you feel like a little family because you know everybody's goals and what their wants and needs are.
And that's a great way to do these things. So how do you set goals? First, review what you've learned when you evaluated your department and station. So when you did your evaluation of everything, what did you learn? Brainstorming with fellow managers, those you supervise, and your supervisor. So depending on who you go for, a station manager, it's probably going to be the advisor. So you brainstorm with the advisors. And hey, trust me, speaking for Jamie, on behalf of Jamie, we love to brainstorm things. We like to talk about things and help you out. So, but then if you're lower and you're working your way up, if you're a news producer talking to your station manager, what does that work like? and down below. Create a list of what to work on and accomplish. Lists are good, and hopefully, and there's apps and stuff you can create nice little lists, or you can go the old-fashioned way and just write it down, like some of us old people. So we have to write things down, and it helps us remember, because hey, we like the technology, but some of these new apps, whoo, too much for me. So, and Zoe's laughing at me because she knows it's true. So, so you keep these things going. That helps. Get feedback on your list. Because this helps because one, getting the feedback helps leads to the next thing, and that's to prioritize the list. What is the most important things you need? And it helps to create your goals. Because there may be some things that, hey, these are great things, but maybe they're not the top things that we need to work on. And maybe there's some other things. It's like reorganizing the studio. Okay, we need to do that. Or we need more equipment. There's some equipment we want, but do we really need it? Or is there some other stuff that we need to get fixed first? So those are always some things to think of. Also, aim high, think big, but be realistic. Because you can think of these grand things, but if you don't have the money or the resources or the talent or whatever else to do it, you may not get there, and then you're going to be frustrated because you didn't meet these goals because they're really big, but we don't have the resources to get there. So aim high, but think realistically of, can we accomplish that? And what we can accomplish, okay, maybe we can't go way up here, but maybe we can come a little bit down here, and we can accomplish a goal by adjusting our resources and our expectations.
Yeah. And just because if you don't meet your goal doesn't mean you still haven't made progress toward it. Some goals take many years to actually come to fruition. And if you only have 1 year as your station manager, executive director, you might have to pass that goal on to the next person, but at least you've started and given them something to be able to work from. So even if you can't achieve everything you want to achieve, that's okay, as long as you've made some progress. So then you want to turn your goals into action. You have a list of maybe 3 things that you want to do. How are you going to make that happen? It's a lot easier to accomplish your goals if you create an action plan. I work on my departmental assessment team, and it's just me. I am the departmental assessment. But when we decide, we're going to measure this, you have to write down, okay, this is what has to be done. And I don't know if you've ever been in a meeting where everyone agrees that this has to be done. If you don't say, okay, and Stephen, you're going to be the one that does it, you come to the next meeting and no one has does it. So you have to say, this is what has to be done, and this is who has to do it. It's a cliche, but it is true. No one plans to fail, but they fail to plan. If you have to write out 20 steps in order to accomplish that goal and assign it to 15 different people, that's fine. Start. Decide what needs to be done, and then decide who needs to do it, because just deciding what needs to be done is not actually going to get anything done. Trust, I've been in a few different meetings, so I've learned this lesson. You also want to when you turn goals into action, you need to know the difference between these 4 things. You have a goal, you have an objective, a strategy, and then a tactic. And we're going to talk about which each one is. The first is a goal. Now, this is from our friend Greg Weston over at University of Pittsburgh. A goal is aspirational. It's vague. It's a what. It's not a how. So in just one example, my goal is to win World War II. That's amazing. How on earth are you going to make that happen? So then you have an objective. It's outcome-based. It's specific. It's measurable. Okay, how am I going to win it? Okay, my objective is to force Germany to surrender within 5 years. Okay, so it's a long-term plan, but it's outcome-based. The outcome is going to force Germany to surrender. It's specific. I want Germany to surrender. And it's measurable within 5 years. So then you need a strategy. How are you going to make this happen? You're getting smaller and smaller and smaller, more granular details. The general approaches and plans for accomplishing those objectives. For example, okay, so I want to win the war by forcing Germany to surrender. Okay, I'm going to isolate the German army. And they're not going to be able to access their materials. I'm going to establish fronts, and Russia's going to attack, and it's going to be awesome. So that's your strategy. Okay, but how does that work? Then you want to go down even granular to the tactic. This is a specific activity that you're going to use to accomplish a task that helps fulfill the strategy, the objective, the goal. Okay, D-Day, invasion of Italy, Operation Tidal Wave. All of these tiny little things are going to cascade up so you finally reach your goal.
Okay. And so when you get, you got your goal, your objective, your strategy, your tactic. So now you got to put everything into motion. So develop an action plan. First, plan ahead. And that's important. Planning ahead. It helps so many things. It does. Define the task. What is it to be, what's got to be done? What is it that has to be done? So specifically say, okay, we need to get new equipment so that we can do these outdoor productions. And I'm speaking video here because we're kind of a video outlet. So we need to go outside and we're going to do this new shoot, and we need a specific gear and stuff. So we got to get some stuff. How will it be accomplished? Well, we're going to use this new gear. We're going to go out and plan. We're going to plan our shots out. We're going to overcome the obstacles. Who is responsible for completing these tasks? As Jamie says specifically, put somebody in charge of these tasks. So for us on a shoot, it's going to be the producer or the director. Hey, these are the people who are in charge, and then they may delegate, but they're the ones ultimately responsible for what's going to happen on that task. What is the deadline? Important, because if deadline's on it, it's like, oh, we'll get to it eventually, or yeah, okay, I heard you. Yeah, it's there. I'm working on it. Oh, I'm still working on it. I'll get, yeah. See what I mean? You just kind of stumble along, and nothing gets accomplished unless you have certain people who just come in and it's like, I'm going to do it now, okay? Which is good. It's great. You need those people, but sometimes you gotta you gotta make sure who's responsible and set those deadlines. How will you know when the plan is accomplished? Well, for us, going back to the video things, we're out on location, we're able to shoot, and we're getting the video footage that we want. All right, so that's good. Do you need to measure your results? If so, how? Yeah, we need, for us, it's, did we get the footage? Is it good? Is it workable? Can we use it in whatever production we are working on? If not, then okay, we may need to go back and reshoot. Yeah, and that can, and not all the time is that a failure, but it may be some, oh, there was some kind of something happened. But then sometimes it's, yeah, that just wasn't right, and we need to do that again. So know how you're going to measure what's successful and good in your plans.
Moving on, I'm going to talk to you about running effective meetings. Meetings are terrible. I just got out of an 1.5-hour meeting, and it started with lunch, so that was nice. But it was fine because it actually followed a lot of the things that we're going to talk about. But meetings can be terrible, and your job as a leader is to not have anyone draw duck tattoos on their arms during meetings. So first and foremost, a written agenda is a must. If you don't have an agenda, how does anyone know what it is that you're going to talk about? And I have, some folks follow the philosophy where if it's not on the agenda, we're not going to talk about it. Because if you, as a person that's, has stake in this meeting, if you haven't thought enough ahead of time as to what it is you're going to talk about, you're obviously not prepared, and no one else is prepared to talk about that. So if it's not written down, then we're not going to talk about it. But first and foremost, is the meeting necessary? Could this meeting have been an email? Maybe, but honestly, maybe not. It depends. So that's why you want to define the purpose of the meeting. What is it that you're going to talk about so that everyone is prepared and they come with the questions that they need and you come with the answers that you need? And then, did I mention that part about the written agenda? That's how you know what's going on. And it's also really helpful to take notes because everyone knows what they're going to talk about. And sometimes it's just, hey, this is something to remind you of. It's on the agenda. And I can just say, you can read it. You are an adult. But what you want to do is you want to start your meeting on time. My time is valuable. Your time is valuable. If a meeting is supposed to start at 2, and every time you start at 2:05, you have taught everyone at the meeting that the meeting doesn't actually start until 2:05. So even the people that get there at 2, are eventually going to start getting there at 2:05 because there's no benefit to being there at 2. Start your meeting on time. You want to encourage group discussion to get all the points of view. It leads to better decisions. So if one person is monopolizing, feel free to call on other people, hey, Susan, what do you think of this? Oh, Jermaine, we haven't heard from you in a bit. Do you have any thoughts on it? And maybe it'll be no, or maybe they were just waiting for it to be called on. But you want to keep discussion relevant to the agenda. Sometimes other things come up in meetings and they do need to be addressed, but they might not need to be addressed right then. If, you kind of get into the weeds on something else, that might be a meeting in and of itself. As the leader, you're running this meeting and you might have to say, you know what, that's a really great point, but we're going to put a pin in it and we're going to come back to it next week because we want to make sure we get through this agenda. You want to move that meeting along at a reasonable pace, and then you want to end on time. This is especially important in student settings where, your students, other people might have class at 3:30. So if we go to 3:45, you force that person to either leave early or miss another engagement. So start on time and end on time. Just remember, my time is valuable. Your time is valuable. And if you ever run over, stop, let people know, hey, it's 3:30 right now. If you have to go, I understand, and let people leave. Because it's always kind of awkward when you really got to go, but you don't want to just get up and walk out. Take a moment and say, we have about 10 minutes more to discuss. If you need to go, go.
Okay. Managing conflicts. This is a fun one. So conflict is inevitable. It's going to happen. But conflict isn't a bad thing, but avoiding the conflict is. Conflict is not a sign of failure. There could be conflict over things that are good. It's like, okay, I want to do this. I'm going to use video terms here. I want to get this shot. But this shot over here, you can get a wider range and you can get some other things in here. And it's not a sign of failure. It's just that it's differences of opinions. So you got to figure out, come to a compromise. Conflict can be scary, especially if you're prone to avoiding the conflict or you're at conflict adverse and you're like, conflict freaks me out. It's okay to be, it can be scary. It is. And it's like, okay, that's fine. But conflict is good because of several things. One, it can help identify a problem. So going back to the shot thing, this shot, but there's something here because you're doing it over here. Hey, there's stuff in the background. That's not going to work. Let's move over here. Oh, there's okay, we're good. It raises questions. All right. Maybe there's something that you haven't thought of or not seen ahead of time. And you're like, oh, yes. Okay, that's something we need to think about and slow down, back things up. Especially if you're like trying to do things in a hurry, you may miss some things. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. Hey, question here. It's person new thinking and new perspectives. Again, going back to the camera, we're looking at things over here, but no, we want to look at things from over here. All right, so that changes things up. So you get a new perspective and it's a new way of thinking of things. And sometimes it creates better solutions because you've had a chance to discuss these issues, work them out, and you know what's working against you, but what's working for you, and create and get better solutions, better product. And you can build better relationships because you're out there, you're talking, and you're not being avoided and letting things build up.
It's always difficult to tell someone that they're doing it wrong. But I mean, what's better, to just allow them to do it wrong for a year and have you fix it every single time? Or say, hey, actually, the headline shouldn't be in all caps. Please stop using exclamation points in your blog posts. It might be a little bit awkward for a little length of time, but eventually, I mean, if I was doing something wrong, I don't want you to fix it. I want you to tell me what it is so that I can fix it, so you don't have to fix it. So conflict can be terrible, but it can also be good.
Right. And Zoe has a couple of good examples of this that she's had over the
Yes, I unfortunately have run into conflict a lot being like a student director. Stephen told it really well last time we did this, but essentially we had one individual over the course of like 4 years, just like constantly getting into and out of trouble with various things. And I think one thing about being a student director that's really hard and stepping into it is you have to be the director and the boss of people that are your age or like a little bit younger or even older. And so me and Steven, we became best friends while we're doing this. And so he was a great resource, knowing your advisor, being good friends with them. And then also just, we developed a verbal and written warning kind of tier list now that we actually use pretty often. And by often, I mean like once or twice a semester if it happens, but a lot more often than before. And it's like, I'm giving you a verbal warning. Hey, you were late to this meeting. I've noticed you were late to the last 3 meetings. Here's your verbal warning. If you're late again, we're going to have to like move past and go a little bit further. They missed the next meeting. It's now a written warning. And on that written warning, it's saying you've missed the meetings on these days. And it's really important that you come to these meetings so you understand what's going on and you're respecting your time, my time, and the entire rest of the team's time. And then I give them a chance to reflect and kind of write down what they're going to do better in the future. And then after that, if they still continue to do that, me and Stephen and then the rest of the admin kind of sit down and talk about what the next step would be, whether that be removing them from Viking Fusion or just kind of like taking down their show or doing something else. And just like, I would like to give them enough chances, but you can only give so many chances to certain people, you know. That's all I have to say.
But as you know, so we mentioned conflict can be resolved like cats and dogs. We can resolve conflict. When you want to manage conflict, you first have to acknowledge that the conflicts exist. Name the problem. This is what happens. And then you want to encourage constructive conversations. Remember that people don't need to get their way as much as they need to be heard and understood. And you want to determine the nature of the conflict. What is happening? Maybe that person is late for the meeting every time because they can't make the meeting at that time. And maybe the right answer is to move it back 30 minutes. I don't know. That's just one thing that it could possibly be. Or they need to take an earlier bus, something that you need to determine, what's the problem here so that you can fix it. You want to focus on solving the problem that caused the conflict, not who is at fault. It doesn't matter why it happened. It doesn't matter whose fault it was. That it doesn't change it if it's my fault or Stephen's fault or Zoe's fault. It happened. Let's fix it. And you want to avoid personal attacks. Well, this happened because so-and-so is always doing such and such. That's not helpful. That's not helpful at all. Let questions be asked. I noticed that you've come to these meeting late. What's something that we can do? Maybe it needs to be a virtual meeting. Listen carefully to the answers. Say, I'm having car trouble. I can't make it in time. I just can't. Okay. If it's just a one-on-one meeting, it can be through Zoom or Google Meet. It doesn't have to be in person. And then you just see the other person just, I've been stressed about this for a year. And if you just talk to them, you can agree upon that solution and then follow through with it. Now, we do want to point out that sometimes it does take more than one try to resolve a conflict. Maybe you switch to virtual meetings and they're still late. Then you might have to keep going and try to figure out what the problem is and keep trying to resolve it.
Okay. With this, stop panicking and or blaming. Don't waste your time dwelling on the fact that something went wrong. And I'm going to go back to an incident where we had a staff member who, when things were going wrong or they were having a problem with one of the staff members, they were writing every little thing down. And it is just becoming this massive snowball. It just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And we're like, okay, wait a minute, hold on. Let's kind of move past this and get to the heart of what's going on. Don't waste energy building a case against someone, especially pointing at all their flaws. This was one of those things. This same person is like pointing out every little thing. Like, okay, forget it. And instead of doing all that, spend your time figuring out how it can be solved. This person really wasn't focused on that. It was more of, this is what was going on, and writing down every little incident they thought they were wrong or somebody else was wrong or whatever else. That's not helping. It's figuring out, okay, how can we communicate better and solve these problems and move forward? And that's something you got to spend your time on, figuring out how to solve the problem instead of figuring out what all went wrong and who's to blame for it. And I think everybody's probably been in, at least in some situation, where the blame game is being there. And I'm sure Jamie's had some experiences like I have over our careers, where there's people who, that's all they want to do is find the blame and find the scapegoat for it. And that's not solving any issues, because the same issues are still there. They're just passing the buck along. So keep that in mind.
Yeah. When possible, you do want to prevent problems from arising. With everything you do, always think, what are the possible consequences or outcomes of this? If I say or do this, how might it be perceived? And, part of my job as an advisor is to think about the worst possible outcome of something and imagine the horror that happens. And, maybe it never will, and it probably never will, but, bring it up to the students. If you say this, it might have this connotation. And maybe they've never thought about it, or maybe, yeah, that's the connotation that I want. Okay. Students can make their own decisions, but they do have to understand those possible consequences and outcomes. If it hits the fan, you need to be prepared for it to hit the fan. Don't be surprised. Know what you're shoving into the fan, and it might come back at you. When things go astray, resist the temptation to should all over everyone. You should have done this. You should have done that. Yeah, well, I didn't. So how is just yelling at someone going to fix it? Don't should someone. Try to determine what the problem is and what the next course of action is. Yeah, you should have, but so what? You didn't.
So our messages. So these are important, and it helps to modify behavior by try practicing these things. Our messages allow you to be assertive without putting the other person on the defensive, because you put it in terms of yourself. I am feeling this way, or I feel that this wasn't the best that we could have done. I feel, and this was developed by child psychologists. It's you can say, I think we could have done this better. So constructive I message. Describe how you feel about the behavior. I feel anxious when I have to post on the website late. Yeah. Describe the behavior, because I didn't get the information that I need in time. Create a concrete description of the effect of the behavior on you. I think it makes me or the station look unorganized and unprofessional. State the desired behavior. I need you to get the information to me earlier. How many of y'all have run into this? Yes? Yep. Okay. So yeah, these are the things we gotta kind of see. So and these things help. And even in personal relationships, I find it irritating. How do you feel? When our plans get canceled at the last minute, there's a description of, put in what is it that's offending you? What's the offending behavior? It's usually too late to make other plans. Concrete effect on you. Okay. And I really would like to let you know in advance when you think our plans are not going to work out, the behavior you would prefer. All right. And again, I've seen this posting on, especially in the years, 10 plus years I've been here at Berry, posted on the website. We're saying, okay, we're going to post here, but then we're getting it out late. Okay, we don't have any information. We got to get it on. Or for those of you who work with news, oh, there's some breaking news, and we got a newscast here coming up in 2 minutes, and we got a news break. Where's the information? Where's the story? Where's the story? Come on, bring it here. So you got to do that. So you got to relate to those. Like, okay, when you're bringing it to me late, it's making me look back, and it's making the station look back. We got to do this thorough. So I would like us to see how it come to me earlier so we can make any corrections and be prepared.
Yeah. And be respectful of other folks. If something needs to go live at noon, that doesn't mean I need it at 11:55. I might need it at 9 a.m. to, copy edit it and make sure that it's formatted correctly. And I have, anxiety over posting on websites for things. And sometimes things don't work and then it's late and it looks terrible. And I feel bad because we got something on the website late. So yeah, that's a good example. We do have some new challenges for 21st century managers. Edward O. Wilson says we have Stone Age emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technology. You can't read the body language and voice intent of an email, text, social media post, etc. That's the problem of instant communication. Sometimes people they say something and they just type it up real quick and send it, and they don't fully understand, I'll always ask for clarification when they were like, yes. And I was like, I asked a 2-part question. What are you saying yes to? I'm 99% sure you're like, yes, you want me to do this. Is that what you want? So that is the problem of instant communication. And another thing is about phones during meetings. Do you allow people to be on their phones during meetings? Because when I'm going like this, it looks like I'm not paying attention to you. I mean, maybe I am, but I don't know about you, but when I'm on my phone, I'm not really paying attention to you. And then 5 minutes later, I'm like, oh, crap. What were we talking about? Oh, you volunteered me for that committee and I didn't say no. Cool. And also want to talk about social media policies. This can be, one of the things that we teach in our training class is don't talk crap about the radio station on the radio station. Do you want people to give, inside baseball, if you will, on their own social media things? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Maybe you want them to create their own accounts. Maybe you don't. Whatever your social media policy is, you want to make sure that everyone on your staff knows it so that they can follow it and revise it as necessary.
Diversity. We've heard this, and it's a big word that we talk about a lot lately, but we are different races, not for strife, but to work together for the general good. That's George Etienne Cartier. And then the smartest person in the room is the room. It's because it's all of us together, Joe Andrew. So these are important things because the more voices that are there, it makes for a better altogether product and you're able to reach more people. So what does diversity matter? Different people bring different things to the table. Me as a middle-aged heterosexual Caucasian male is going to have a much different perspective than a female Black young woman. Yes?
Yes.
Yeah. So bringing us together, we're able to find different things and different approaches that maybe work to everybody. Studies have shown that diverse groups are more productive, creative, and happy. It's what Woody Guthrie saw coming. It's all of us together, we're working together, we're as a big team, and it brings the world together. Yes. It helps. It helps us to advance what we're doing. And I know sometimes that can be hard, especially if you're at institutions where you have majority of different races or religious affiliations or sexual orientation or all this kind of stuff. And it may be harder to pull people together, but it's important to go out and grab as much diversity as you can for your station to help promote that diversity and create things that everybody's going to enjoy.
If everyone is the same, then you're not getting any new ideas. So, and we need, racial diversity, gender diversity, sexual orientation, national origin, as much diversity as you can get is helpful because one, it shows, as long as you have people in positions where they're happy, more people will say, oh, I am a queer Muslim and I noticed that my queer Muslim friend works here and they're happy. This must be a welcoming place for me. And so, that's the goal, is to have everyone feel welcome in your community, regardless of what their identity groups might possibly be. And then the diversity shows in the ideas. Like there's a story about, people made iPhones with for really big hands because there were no women in the room with tiny hands. If they had a woman in the room, maybe they'd say, oh, maybe you should make the phone a little bit smaller. That's just one example of the lack of diversity and the mistakes that can be made when someone would be like, how many times have you been in something and you saw, it was like, if anyone had asked my opinion, I would have been like, this is a bad idea. That's why you want those people in the room where it happens, so they can tell you in advance that that's a really dumb idea. So how do you improve diversity? Recruit pretty much everyone. At NC State, we have a list of folks that we want to just make sure they know when we have DJ trainings. We reach out to the GLBT Center, we reach out to the Graduate Student Association, we reach out to the South Asian Student Association, we reach out to this group, as many different groups as possible, because we want to make everyone feel comfortable expressing their ideas. And we don't want anyone to close down conversations. And remember the basic tenets of managing conflict. Some people that are different than you can be scary because it's unknown. You don't know what it's like, but they're just people. It's cool. Oh, they like the same music as I do. That's awesome. And don't be afraid to make mistakes and keep the food coming. We do all face similar challenges when it comes to making our student media outlets diverse in all aspects. If you're at a predominantly white institution, there might not be a lot of students of color to recruit. Do your best. And if you keep doing your best, if you keep creating an environment where everyone is welcome, eventually the numbers will reflect that.
So is this you? Raise your hands. Yeah, okay. Then delegate. So delegation is an important thing, and it's one that as a leader you have to know how to do, because you cannot do it all yourself. So yeah, you can't do it all. It's already a balancing act in your position of balancing all the different things that you got to do with your position, and balancing those below you, keeping them happy, getting their work, getting what you got to do, and then whoever's above you being responsible to them and helping to fulfill their goals and stuff. Delegation is an essential management tool. Why? Because more gets accomplished, because you have multiple people working on things instead of just one person. It allows your team to become more involved and committed to you and the station. If they're not involved, then why are they there? All right. And I've seen this where leaders are like, they're doing it all, and the people who works on their teams or works for them are just kind of like, okay, what do I do? I could okay. You get, hey, I could do it. Oh, you did. Okay, what do I do now? So it's important to know when to delegate. It develops leadership skills in others. So I'm going to pick on Zoe again. She's a senior, so she's been here for a while, and she's getting ready to leave the coop. So she's got to get others involved so that when people come along after her. And this one, the last one, I have been there, done that many, many times. It helps avoid burnout. All right. And so I'm going to let Zoe speak here as the student perspective on this delegation matter.
Yes, it's especially like a Berry College student. We do a lot of things all the time. I'm also a double major, so I can definitely speak on burnout. Understanding that you can't do it all is something that I still struggle with. I wish I could do everything all the time, but I can't. One thing that we're dealing with when we go back to the don't have an assistant if you don't need one, we kind of decided that our production supervisor needed an assistant, but then once the semester kind of got going, we kind of forgot to give him anything to do, because like our production supervisor wanted to do everything, which is great for her, but not great for her mental health in the end. So assisting with her and getting him some responsibilities throughout the year, I think it's this semester going a lot better. He's got a lot of things to do. She's got like half of the stuff that she already had to do off of her plate, and it's going very smoothly. So just internalizing that you can't do everything all the time, unfortunately, that was one thing I had to really learn, and one kind of understand all of your responsibilities that you'll have to do in the role that you're getting. It becomes a lot easier to not want to do things.
So time management tips. I found this a little graphic, and I think it really speaks a lot. You can be a good person with a kind heart and still say no. Delegate. If you don't have time to do something, there are some things that as the manager, you have to do. Like, part of my job as the advisor is to approve everyone's time. I can't delegate that to anyone else, but I don't have to be the one that does the t-shirt inventory every time. There are things that other people can do to help me. And, I can ask them to do it. I can delegate. And I can also learn to say no. If people want me to do something and I just don't have the capacity, it's okay to say no. I'm still a good person. I still have a kind heart. And I still said, no, I don't want to do it. You also want to take the time to plan. So, and it might just be, if you have a insurmountable task, well, break it into 20 surmountable tasks. Oh, I already did the first one. Awesome. And then you want to prioritize. Make sure you know what is the most important thing, because during your tenure as a leader, you're not going to be able to do everything you want to do. I work 40 hours a week. Stephen works 40 hours a week, and we still don't get to do everything that we want to do. And we've been here for a decade plus, and we still haven't done everything that we want to do. But when we prioritize, we can do the most important things. To-do lists aren't silly. I have a to-do list. It's a sticky note that's like kind of big. I put the week at the top and I list them. And because if it's not on my to-do list, I don't know what it is. You want to set your deadlines and stick to them. Keep a calendar so you don't forget them. If it is not on my Google Calendar, I don't know about it. On Monday, I was like, oh, I'm doing a session on Wednesday. Cool. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been here. If it doesn't need to be done, don't do it. Sometimes it doesn't need to be done and you can just forget about it or give it to someone else. Also, you're a team. You work together. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to have someone help you, just not for them to do all of your work, because then you have delegated too much. But remember, you are a team and you can work together. And this to-do list, that's not helpful. Think about what everything actually is and then break it down, because it's a lot more manageable that way. And sometimes it's okay to hide. It's okay to close the door, turn off the lights, and just take a little bit of time for yourself, because you can't pour from an empty cup.
So some other tips for you here, as we're getting near our time here and the session be ending soon, but provide regular feedback and periodic evaluation. It helps. It does help. I know here at Viking Fusion, we do at least an evaluation every semester. That's the formal evaluations, but we try to give feedback often and regularly so that when it comes to evaluation time, there's not any big surprises. Don't hire your friends or your roommate. And sometimes this is different perspectives that students have, but if you do, set clear expectations. And again, I'm going to go we're a small liberal arts college, so everybody knows everybody. So everybody's friends with everybody. So you're working with all your friends. So how do you manage that? And that's sometimes where some of the worst conflicts come in, because you're you're in the top position, and then your best friend is in the position right under you, and they're wanting to do things one way and you're wanting to do things another way. And then be careful of that and mindful of that. Build relationships with campus administrators and faculty. This is a big thing, because you never know when you're going to have a show or something, you need faculty to come in, or you want to do something, you need faculty and administrators helps to assist you, or administrators giving you the money. Yes, right. And we could use some more of that around here. So those are some things. So building those relationships and getting on good terms with them, it helps to bring you forward, and maybe, hey, gives you new opportunities. Plan some downtime, as Jamie was just saying, give some time to yourself and time for your staff. Give some downtime. Let's just relax and let's enjoy yourselves. And then utilize your resources. You've got all kinds of resources on your campus, and in the cities you're in, and everything in out. Use those resources, utilize them, help them, get them to help you be the better you and the better station that you can be.
If you hire a friend, and you're probably going to because you like the people that you work with, be professionals first and friends second. You're going to be in charge of your friends, maybe your romantic partner, who knows? But you want to establish a level of professionalism. You got to find that balance that works for you. You know, what if you have to fire your roommate? It might happen. You want to be respected, but you also want people to feel comfortable coming to you for help and advice and friendship. Be casual, yet professional when the time calls. My philosophy is business, and we can be totally friends, but if you mess up my business, then we have to deal with that. And some people are able to function that way and some people aren't, which is why hiring your friends can be difficult. But again, not hiring your friends can also be difficult because, you know, you only have 10 people that work at your station and you're best friends with 8 of them. So what are you supposed to do? And here is some suggested reading for you. Start with why, the no asshole rule, and work happy, what great bosses know. So I don't know, maybe your summer reading plans. You can add these to your list, just some additional management work. So thank you. That is our session. And we are going to now take questions. And I see there's one in the chat, couple. Oh yeah, it's just Lynn saying, or it's Chloe saying we're great and Lynn saying we're great. This is honestly, straight up, this is my favorite presentation. And I'm not saying this because I'm doing it. I was, in on it when Mark and John were doing it, and it was great. And, I'm taking all kinds of notes, and, I've learned a lot from both participating in it as a presenter, as well as just being an audience member in it with other people. And so it really is one of the best presentations that CBI does. And so shout out to Mark and John again for making it, and as well as Stephen and Zoe for helping me. Especially, I really always appreciate the student insight, because part of diversity is listening to your students and what they have to say as well. So does anyone else have any questions about specific management tools? I mean, if it's too personal, we can stop the recording and answer it, or, whatever it is that you need.
I'll ask a real quick question. Jamie, I think it was interesting the way you noted that you could give up some things and let your students do that. One thing that came to mind was the public file. And I was like, oh, could a student do that? So in your advisor opinion, is that something you think that could be handed to a student worker? Or do you think that's one of those things like, no, we have to do that as advisors?
The answer is mostly. In my 15-ish years here, one of the things that was always a really difficult task was to gather information for a quarterly issues and programs list from the public file, because it was hard for me because I didn't make the program. And so probably 5 or so years ago, I reached out to our public affairs directors and said, hey, this is your show. At the end of each quarter, I need you to fill this out, and I need you to give it to me by this date. So they're doing 80% of the work, and then they're sending it to me, and they know when the deadline is, and that's when it has to be. And so they send it to me, and then I'm the one that's actually doing the uploading it. But it's so much easier now. And because, again, they're the ones creating the content, they know that this one was about environmentalism and this one was about business. And so it's just so much easier for them to do it. It takes them half as long. And then they just send it to me, and I do a little editing and put it in fancy font and upload it. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I used to do that I don't do anymore. And it's great because then they know how to do it, and then I don't have to. Public file is one of them.
That is a new session for advisors only. What can you give your students to do?
That's a really great idea, Lynn. I mean, Not a
No,
lot.
it's
It's a public
Zoe, it's just so you learn. It's so you know the importance of everything.
Steven gets me to do enough. I think he's good. He doesn't need to go to that meeting.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
just
know what
passed
to
off
talk about,
social
Zoe.
media accounts to my promotions director. I used to do them, every month I would go in and be like, this is how many Twitter followers we have. And I stopped doing it about 6 months ago because I just didn't have the time. And I was like, you know what? And he had this task that he no longer has. And so I'm like, oh, there you go. Find out people on Instagram. What
I
are our
gave
top
up-
Instagram posts? It's his job, so he should be doing it, right?
I gave up writing press releases and gave it to our public relations team and
I
stuff.
tried it,
So
and that doesn't work.
because I was doing it all the time, like, wait a minute, and they're PR majors, so they need stuff for their portfolio. So here you go. So do we have any other questions, anything at this time? No? All right. Well, thank you all for joining us today. We appreciate it. Again, reminder that we have the coming up on Tuesday, February 22nd is the use in Discord to communicate with your staff and more. Maddie, Jeanette, and Annabelle Poland will be leading that. So please join us for that. You can find the link to RSVP on the Ask CBI website under resources and online discussions and webinars. Check it out. And again, thank you for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your week.
All right. We'll see you all for the Discord session.
Thanks so much for hosting this one.
Thank you.
Thanks.